Two Worlds, One Family by Dragon Translator. Chapter 22. How is that fair? Hiccup awoke to the front door slamming open. Sharpshot bounced onto the bed beside Hiccup. Toothless moved to the top of the stairs and growled. A voice growled back.
Not now, Toothless. Hiccup, get up and get to the Great Hall.
Hiccup reached for his metal leg, strapping it on. Toothless remained by the stairs and looked over his wing at Hiccup.
One of these mornings you'll wake up to silence, he said.
Wouldn't know what to do with myself then, Hiccup muttered, standing and reaching for Toothless's saddle and tail fin.
Stoick reached the top of the stairs. No time for that either, son. The Great Hall has been damaged.
Hiccup blinked.
By what? The claw marks are from a nightmare.
Hiccup sighed and followed his father out of the house. Sharpshot rode upon Hiccup's back and Toothless walked at his side, keeping one wing raised so he could stand close to Hiccup. They reached the hall and Hiccup frowned. The front door had several claw marks streaking down the left one, as if the culprit had difficulty opening the door. Hiccup walked in behind his father, and his frown deepened. The poles all had claw marks, as did some of the tables and counters, but several baskets of fish sat still next to many of the claw marks.
Oh my, so it is true.
Hiccup turned and his eyes narrowed as Mildew walked in.
The Great Hall destroyed. All the memories. My 3 weddings, their 3 funerals.
Oh, shut up, old man, Gita growled, moving around him and walking over to Hiccup. No dragon did this.
You see the marks,
Mildew cried. No dragon did this, Gita repeated, her voice ice and her words clipped. I'm pretty sure these are nightmare claw marks, Gita, Fishleg said. Gita grunted. Does none in this tribe remember anything beyond a mere day? She growled. Did any of you watch that young nightmare? He needed several dragons supporting him in order to lift his leg. Yeah, but his leg was broke, Fishleg said. Fish, look at that claw mark. Any of these claw marks. How can a nightmare lift their leg and hit the pole and not make more marks? Or have their wing claws not hit anything? What nightmare in existence will use a foot to open a door when it has 2 claws on both wings? No dragon did this. A human did something that could make claw marks did. Bah, Mildew said. You know nothing, witch. Gita's eyes narrowed. I am no witch, she stated before turning to Stoick. You have someone on this island actively doing things to get rid of the dragons. Might I suggest you think as to why that would be, sir?
Do you know who did this? Stoick asked.
Gita tilted her head. Yes, sir. Chief, you really listening to this witch?
Stoick glared at Mildew. Gita is not a witch, Mildew.
Stoick turned to Gita.
We will find out as the gods wish, lass.
Aye, Chief, Gita said, though Hiccup could hear her annoyance.
All right, everyone clear out so the hall can be repaired.
Gita walked out, but paused next to Mildew. Hiccup saw her stare at the old man, eyes narrowed, before she grunted and walked on out the door. Hiccup blinked. He glanced at Toothless to find his dragon brother glaring at Mildew as well. Hiccup turned back to his father. He understood his dad's reluctance to know what was to come. If the gods wished a path taken, knowing about it in advance and avoiding it seemed a surefire way to make the gods mad. Still, the gods had asked Gita to teach all the tribe a lesson, and allowed her to live among them after fulfilling her part. Hiccup glanced around the hall once more, agreeing with Gita's words. No dragon did this. No nightmare alive could bend either of its legs in the manner the claw marks would suggest. Not to mention none of the fish were taken. Hiccup knew of no one, dragon or fish, that would not eat after any activity if given the chance. Dad? Hiccup began.
No, son. I know what you're thinking. We don't need Gita to tell us what happens.
But, Dad...
No, son.
Dad, I believe her. I don't think a dragon did this.
Regardless, son, I can't do anything unless I have solid proof. And just a word isn't enough.
So we're just going to let people think a nightmare did this? How is that fair?
Hiccup turned and walked out of the hall, his father's voice following behind him. A yell he ignored. He could see the effects the damage had done upon the village, and the effects the belief it was a dragon had as well. People who had once smiled at him, Toothless and Sharpshot, now stared out of the corner of their eye, as if both dragons would suddenly turn and pounce. Not all did this, but enough did, and Hiccup walked through the village growing angrier. The dragons had helped the village numerous times. Toothless fired the final shot that killed the Red Death. All the teens dragons and many of the riderless dragons brought in food and wood. Yet none of that seemed to matter to many in the tribe. Something had gone wrong, and it seemed many had reverted back to the blame it on the dragons days. Toothless dove sideways in front of Hiccup. Hiccup stopped. He heard deep growls echo from both of his dragon brothers, seconds before he heard Mildew's voice. "There, you see! Minding my own business, and this beast about attacks me!" "We only attack if you harm Hiccup, you flameless, scaleless lizard!" Toothless snarled. Mildew stepped back, staring at Toothless. "Vile beast! Quit your snarling, or I'll—" He got no further. Stormfly screeched as she landed on Hiccup's right side, tail raised and spikes out. Hiccup saw a blue blur. Astrid stood in between Toothless and Mildew. She had her axe in hand, and from the set of her shoulders, Hiccup knew she was glaring at the old man. A shadow fell over Hiccup, and he looked up. Shadowfire's neck stretched over him, Sharpshot, Toothless, and Astrid. The horn surrounding Shadowfire's head flared as a rumbling growl erupted from the dragon. Frostfire and Palewing bounced onto Toothless's back. Frostfire's wings flared as he landed upon Astrid's shoulder. He snarled, and Hiccup saw wisps of vapour curl from the dragon's small muzzle. Palewing hopped onto Hiccup's free shoulder as Sharpshot scurried up to the other one. Gyda moved to stand at Astrid's left side. Hiccup saw lightning curling around at Gyda's fingers. Hiccup heard shuffling feet and wings, and was not surprised when Barf and Belch appeared on his left side, the twins standing in front of their dragon, arms crossed over their chests, and both glaring at Mildew as well. "You see?" Mildew said, turning to the crowd that formed. "Harassing me, and I ain't done nothing. Is this how we hairy hooligans are going to be treated from now on, with these dragons and this boy living here?" "That boy saved our entire tribe," a new voice said. Hawk moved to the front of the crowd. "Those dragons you whine about helped defeat a monster that killed 4 of our tribe and injured many others, including Hiccup. That boy, as you call our chief's son, and those dragons have worked hard every day, alongside the other teens, to ensure we have food and supplies to last the winter. What exactly have you done to ensure we survive the winter? Things are changing, Mildew, and I'm all for it. You can either change with us or get left behind." Hawk paused, then walked over and leaned close to Mildew, before whispering in a voice set in iron, "Your choice." "Bah! You all are fools!" With that, Mildew walked out of the village, heading for his farm. Hawk turned to Hiccup. "There are more than you think, Hiccup, who support you and what you are doing. Don't ever forget that." Hiccup smiled. "Thank you." Hawk tipped his head and walked away. Hiccup took a deep breath as his companions turned to face him. "Sorry," he said. He paused. I saw the people staring at my brothers, as if both were just up and decided to attack people. As if the entire battle with the Red Death meant nothing now that some problems have arose." Hiccup grunted. "I feared they'd believe Mildew." "I doubt they did, brother," Toothless said. "At least not all of them. Most were glaring at Mildew." Hiccup sighed, looking up at the sky. He felt a hand on his upper arm and dropped his gaze, finding Astrid staring at him. Her gaze flicked to Sharpshot and Palewing. Both dragons hopped down, Frostfire following them. Astrid pulled Hiccup into an embrace. Hiccup lifted his arms, circling Astrid's frame, and laid his chin upon her shoulder. She gently squeezed him and began to rub his back in a calming manner. No one spoke or moved for several long heartbeats. Hiccup! Hiccup curled into Astrid's hold for a brief moment upon hearing his father's bellow, before straightening and releasing her. Astrid made it a point to slide her hand down Hiccup's arm and entwine her fingers with his, standing at his side as Stoick reached them. Hiccup saw the twins move around Barf and Belch to stand closer. Stoick stopped and stared, his gaze flicking around Hiccup, before focusing on Hiccup, and placing a hand upon Hiccup's shoulder. Son, I'm not just gonna let people think a dragon did that. I'm gonna find out who, but I can't have it told to me by someone who knows the future. If she tells us one thing, what's to stop the tribe from demanding to know everything? When we have a good harvest, when we have a bad harvest, if we're invaded, if we have peace. The gods give us challenges to face in order to test us, son. But they also teach us, and we are better for the lessons. If the answers are just handed to us, we don't learn, and we don't grow. You understand? Hiccup sighed. Yes, he said softly. Son, no matter what, the dragons are now a part of our tribe. I'm not going to make them leave. Hiccup smiled. Thanks, Dad. Stoick smiled and patted Hiccup's shoulder. Now, what don't you all go for a flight? And Hiccup, meet me in the hall later today. I have something special for you. Hiccup blinked. Okay, Dad, he said. Stoick tipped his head and walked away. Hiccup turned back to Astrid and squeezed her hand. Thank you, he whispered. Always, she returned in a whisper. Hiccup then looked over his shoulder at the twins and smiled. Thanks. Any time, H. Tuff said. I know people think we only care about pranks and chaos, Ruff said, but we all watched you and Toothless fight that dragon. And we saw you fall into those flames, Tuff added. So what we're saying, H, Ruff continued, is that we're here for you now, Tuff finished, and we're sorry for not being there before. Hiccup smiled. Thank you, he said softly. For the record, Shadowfire said in the silence that fell, none of us really know when your lot had a good or bad harvest. Your tale didn't go into that much detail, Alpha. Some things are boring to know about. Goofball, Frostfire muttered. Short legs. Really need new insults, Toothless said. Hiccup let Astrid's hand go, so he could turn to face his brother. Like the one you spat out to Mildew? What was that you called him? A flameless, scaleless lizard? Ooh, ouch, Shadowfire said, wincing. That would get my tongue scrubbed with soap. I never washed your mouth out with soap, son. Don't tell people I did. No, you just popped my muzzle. Gita grunted. I was told to do that by that old female nightmare that lived back in the property. Old Purple Scale? Shadowfire asked. Mom, I don't think she's ever had hatchlings in her life. She was too grumpy to have a mate. Always screeching at me and Frostfire when we... Frostfire smacked his brother on the foreleg with his tail, an act that did not go unnoticed by anyone. Boys, did you purposefully annoy Purple Scale while growing up? Both dragons looked away, warbling in the old tongue. Gita frowned, crossed her arms, and stared at her sons. Toothless snickered. Stormfly jittered. Barf and Belch both chortled. Palewing and Sharpshot just shook their heads. You guys are so busted, Toothless said in a sing-song voice. Shadowfire and Frostfire stared at him. Hiccup placed his free hand over his mouth to keep his grin hidden. Astrid snickered softly. The twins looked as if Loki Day came early, and they were privileged to view a well-crafted prank unfold. Gyda groaned as she pinched the bridge of her nose. I really don't know what I'm going to do with you two. Gyda muttered, You do realise, boys, that Purple Scale never told me you two were annoying her, saving both of you from being grounded? Shadowfire and Frostfire looked at each other, and then at their mother. She just stared at them, eyebrow lifted. Shadowfire looked down and shook himself. Well, that makes everything Purple Scale did different. Gyda chuckled. She did tell me once that she thought of you two as her adoptive grand hatchlings. And now I feel bad for what we did, Frostfire muttered. Frost, Gyda said. Remember this for when you and Palewing have hatchlings of your own. I'll remember, Mama Gyda, Palewing said. She tilted her head, glancing between her mate and her mother-in-law. She then nuzzled Frostfire and chuckled. Palewing? Frostfire asked, staring at her with his head tilted. Palewing just walked over, climbing up Gyda's robe, peeking over her mother-in-law's left shoulder. Gyda tilted her own head down to the side. Palewing nuzzled against her. Gyda frowned. Daughter? The mage asked. Palewing giggled. I believe so, she said. Frostfire flared his wings and fluttered up until he was even with his mate. Palewing? He asked. Palewing purred. Frostfire's jaw dropped and his wings flickered. Hiccup's eyes widened as the small dragon began to fall. Toothless lifted his head, catching the small dragon. Frostfire flared his wings to steady himself and shuffled down Toothless's neck so he was closer to Gyda and Palewing. He stared at Palewing. Hiccup glanced at Astrid. She just shrugged. Hiccup turned to Toothless, who was smiling. Toothless tossed his head towards Palewing. Hiccup frowned. Alpha, Palewing began. Our kind has no elder here. She paused. Would Elder Gothi be able to tell, Mama Gyda? Gyda blinked. I don't know, she said. Hiccup, would Gothi be able to tell if a dragon was to be a mother? Hiccup's eyes widened again. You mean? He asked, finally understanding Palewing's odd actions and Frostfire's reaction. I think so, Palewing said. We have no elder of our own here to confirm it, and any humans who would know are back in our old homeworld. You could ask the elder of my flock, Shop said as he climbed to peek over Hiccup's right shoulder. Your kind is similar to mine. She might be able to help. And we're going now, Frostfire said, rising from Toothless's back and into the air. Palewing looked up at him and laughed. My love, why don't we let the rest of them join us? Alpha's father did say we should go for a flight. Oh, yeah, right. Frostfire looked down. Everyone's welcome to come, he said, even though Hiccup could tell the dragon was severely distracted. Hiccup chuckled as he remounted Toothless, and Astrid climbed aboard Stormfly. Gyda climbed into Shadowfire's saddle. Barf and Belch lowered their necks so the twins could climb into their saddles. Frostfire landed in front of his mother and stared at his mate. Please let me hold Mum's back, and let her hold you. Palewing snorted, but complied. They stopped by Hiccup's hut long enough for him to be put on Toothless's saddle and tail fin before they all flew to the forest. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Okay, so in This Is Interesting, Gyda knows that Mildew is behind the vandalism, but because of Stoick's reasoning she can't say anything, which is understandable if annoying. And also, Frostfire and Palewing might become parents. Oh, I'm so happy. And that bit about old Purple Scale seeing them as her grand hatchlings and not telling on them when they annoyed her. Okay, why have I never met that dragon, yet I already like her? Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified when I've uploaded a new video. Have a good day, night or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.